The success story of the founder of KFC, Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders is certainly no stranger. The KFC icon in the form of an old man, with a beard and glasses, is usually seen on fast food packaging, always present with the tagline, "Chicken Champion." Quoted from the official KFC Indonesia website, the company has a network of KFC Indonesia restaurants with a total of 727 outlets spread across 170 cities/regencies throughout Indonesia. So, who really is Colonel Sanders and what is the story of his journey in establishing KFC globally? The following is the complete business review. 1. Colonel Sanders' early life. Colonel Sanders was born in 1890 on a small farm in Henryville, Indiana. Her father, Wilbert Sanders, died when she was 5 years old, forcing her mother to work at a local tomato canning factory and sewing for immediate family, resulting in her often being away for days at a time. Meanwhile, Sanders, who was the oldest of 3 children, was forced to take care of his home and family. That's when he began to develop his cooking skills. At age 10, he took his first job on a local farm. When Sanders was 12 years old, his mother remarried and took the children to live with her new husband in a suburb outside Indianapolis. His relationship with his new stepfather is tense, so it's no wonder the two often fight. Finally, at the age of 13, due to many conflicts, Sanders was sent back to Clark County, where the family first lived. 2. Doing various kinds of work. When he got there, to survive, Sanders worked odd jobs. One of the jobs he once held was as a horse-drawn carriage painter in Indianapolis. Then at the age of 14, Sanders moved to southern Indiana and worked on one of Sam Wilson's farms and earned $10 to $15 a month. Not only that, Sanders also worked as a parking attendant. Until finally, he asked for permission from his mother to go with his uncle to New Albany, Indiana in 1906. At that time, his uncle worked for a tram company and Sanders was also a conductor. Reporting from KFC, he has tried various jobs to be able to finance daily life for himself or his family, starting from train firefighter, insurance salesman, secretary, tire seller, ferry operator, lawyer, and even becoming a midwife. 3. Enlist in the U.S. Army. Even in 1906, when he was only 16 years old, he dared to falsify his date of birth in order to enlist in the United States Army. This method turned out to be successful and Sanders got his first assignment in Cuba and 1 year later he was honorably discharged. After leaving the United States Army in 1907, Sanders then returned to live with his uncle in Sheffield, Alabama. Sanders at that time worked for the Southern Railway serving as a blacksmith in the workshops. Then after that, Sanders had time to change residences and jobs. Then when Sanders was studying law and was handling a case. There, he finally met his wife, Josephine. However, Sanders felt that the income was not worth it, so he decided to use his savings to set up a ferry company. This business was considered quite successful. In just 2 years, the ferry company owned by Sanders has generated profits of up to thousands of dollars and is also being attracted by investors. Finally, in 1923, Sanders gave up the company and sold it to investors. The proceeds from the sale of the company were used by Sanders to establish a new company, namely Lights, in 1924. However, the company failed miserably along the way because another electricity company emerged that was more dominant and could create new technology. 4. The story of Colonel Sanders' family. Colonel Sanders' own family life was often chaotic and sometimes full of tragedy. In 1908, he married Josephine King, a woman with whom he had 3 children, Margaret, Harlan Jr., and Mildred. However, his inability to hold down a job soon proved troublesome at home, and Josephine eventually left him for a short time, and took the children with her, due to his career woes. They divorced in 1947. Disaster struck again when Harlan Jr. died at the age of 20 due to complications from blood poisoning he suffered during a tonsillectomy, generally considered a simple, routine procedure, even at the time. According to John Ed Pierce, one of the Colonel's biographers, Sanders suffered from depression. Finally, in 1949, he married a woman named Claudia Lettington, with whom he would remain until his death in 1980. 5. Colonel Sanders achieves success. Eventually, Colonel Sanders ran a gas station in Corbin, Kentucky. To make ends meet, he started cooking and selling food to tired travelers stopping at stations. His meals, which typically range from fried chicken to burgers to green beans to hot biscuits, have earned him a reputation in the region for his skills as a chef. Although he admitted that it was not a glamorous job, Sanders got one thing he had never found in his life, namely success. It was a simple but fulfilling life for him. Several years later, he turned the gas station into a restaurant called Harlan Sanders Restaurant. Thanks to his ability to mix recipes, Sanders began to perfect the chicken recipe, which KFC still closely guards to this day. In fact, his name skyrocketed after he developed a method of cooking chicken in a pressure cooker that reduces fat and maintains flavor while remaining juicy in an efficient way. 6. Sanders suffers losses. Several years later, the layout of Kentucky cities began to change. So that Sanders Restaurant is no longer strategic and attracts visitors to come. This was one of the reasons why he was forced to sell the restaurant through an open auction to pay off all his debts. 7. Implement a franchise strategy. After the closure of his restaurant, Colonel Sanders devoted himself to his cooking, trying new business tactics. He traveled across the United States, visiting potential restaurant franchisees and offering them his chicken recipe. Despite experiencing many rejections, Sanders tirelessly believed that he would succeed if he kept trying. In fact, when he reached old age, where he continued to force himself to travel around and go directly to the market to promote the idea of selling KFC chicken, Sanders was attacked by rheumatism. The reason is, with the limited money he has to sleep in the car. During 2 years of traveling around offering his recipes, Sanders was only able to satisfy 5 restaurants. Sanders' first franchisee was Pete Harmon, a friend in Salt Lake City, who has seen sales boom since starting serving chicken made with Sanders' methods and recipes. From there, KFC grew rapidly, which increasingly marked its success. In 1963, the KFC franchise had successfully operated 600 restaurants. This amount is certainly very large and it is impossible for Sanders to manage it alone. Therefore, Sanders decided to sell his business to John Brown Jr. and also a billionaire, Jack Mass, for $1 million. Not only that, from this, Sanders continues to receive a salary every month for life worth $4,000 and then it increases to $70,000 in exchange for his consultant role, the advertisements that Sanders has published, and his position as one of the main directors of the company. Sanders was able to achieve KFC success when he was already old. This certainly made him get used to working with his aging body, even though at that time his wealth was already so large that it was beyond counting. But Sanders still often visits KFC branches in various regions and even countries to provide motivation, promotions, or carry out inspections. 8. Harlan Sanders dies. In 1980, Sanders was diagnosed with leukemia. Then he died on December 6, 1980 at the age of 90 years. Sanders died at a Jewish hospital in Louisville, Kentucky and was later buried in Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky. After Sanders died, in 1982, the KFC franchise business became part of the Reynolds subsidiary, and in 1986, KFC was again purchased by the Pepsi-Cola Company for $840 million. Then in 1995, the number of fried chicken restaurants reached 9,000. Meanwhile, there are 750,000 employees working at the restaurant spread across 92 countries in the world. Then, until 2022, KFC will have established more than 22,621 KFC outlets in 150 countries around the world, including Indonesia. That's the story behind the success of KFC founder, Colonel Sanders. Hope it inspires. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the latest videos.